Here at UBI Works, we believe that basic income is a key building block of a human-centered society, one that prioritizes human flourishing, innovation, and the well-being of our communities. Commonwealth Canada is a newer initiative and sister organization that builds on this work to tackle the root causes of poverty, extreme inequality, and our housing struggles by asking, how can we steward and share public and natural forms of wealth that could pay us dividends, build a healthier housing system, and spread the gains of the future economy? Our movement is about as diverse as it gets, from all walks of life, culturally, geographically, and politically, united by the belief that people deserve security, opportunity, freedom, and dignity in an economy that's rapidly polarizing and automating. We're going to share some highlights of our work this year, publications, campaigns, influential personalities, and a preview of what to look forward to in 2016, 2026. By the end, our goal is that you feel closer to our work with a better understanding of the multiple fronts on which progress is to be made. We'll share the slides and recording later. There's a lot to cover, so I'm going to fly through these pretty fast. First, I want to share a reminder of our why. This is from a supporter's letter earlier this year. We're working towards the emancipation of people everywhere, towards a future of greater autonomy, time, and energy for what matters. And at the end of the day, it's seeing letters like this that really reminds us why we're doing this. Some high-level numbers from this year. Across our digital channels, we clocked in 25 million unique impressions, which is just over 500,000 a week. Not bad considering we're competing against rage bait and cat videos. We're coming up on almost 200,000 subscribers across social and email, and our advocates sent over 3,300 personal letters to over 900 sitting politicians. And all of these were individualized personal letters. Those 900 include representatives at all three levels of government. And we're not counting the nearly 700 federal candidates and 300 local editors that we wrote. This really was a cross-country effort. During the Liberal leadership race in February, we got over 1,000 letters sent from coast to coast. Turns out, Mark Carney's office opened 90% of them. You'll see later why he might give us an audience. We saw overarching themes in these letters: losing hope for the next generation, record frequency of AI mentions, UBI as a dividend from common resources. Many reiterated the economic case, and interestingly, it was very cross-partisan. Many liberals and non-liberals alike participated. That same month, one of our leadership candidates, Karina Gold, promised to put us on a path to basic income as part of modernizing our safety net. We did hear from Gold's office that they saw these emails. It wouldn't be a stretch to believe we had an impact. Soon after, we launched a campaign targeting federal election candidates. And again, 1,000 personal letters coast to coast. Many said it's a top issue for them. It shouldn't be partisan. And it works. It's always very humbling to see supporters use our suggested talking points directly in their mail. A basic income could grow the economy more than it costs, and we could fund it for as little as 3% of total government spending, with no new taxes on working Canadians. There were also a number who bridged basic income to common wealth. It could be funded by land value, and it could fund a citizen's dividend, similar to what they have in Alaska. Later, we published a 2-page fact sheet and launched a campaign to direct mail it with a personal letter to our new class of MPs. If you haven't yet, please visit this webpage. You can find it on ubiworks.ca and check if you're in one of the 80% of ridings where nobody has yet mailed your MP. We need your help. Shout out to Tana Christensen from Victoria, BC, who's been hard at work driving this campaign forward. And I'm not going to lie, it looks pretty great in color and laminated. It makes for a great gift. There's an active House of Commons petition right now urging the feds to work with PEI on a demonstration project initiated by Susan Abels of Basic Income BC. Our supporters helped add over 1,000 signatures to help qualify for a speech on the floor by MP Sean Casey. Thank you to everyone who participated. We're in the business of equipping readers with evidence-based narratives. Here are some of the publications we put out this year to do that. Last month, we put out an op-ed in collaboration with Patriotic Millionaires Canada in the Toronto Star in response to the federal budget. There's a lot committed to infrastructure and defense and corporate tax relief, but not so much about investing in everyday Canadians. For just 1% of GDP, we could guarantee a basic income floor that truly builds Canada strong from the bottom up. Commonwealth Canada published an article showing how BC's land value could be reinvested to improve affordability in the housing market, because after all, land is the number one source of both wealth and poverty by far. We show how a land value tax could fund a UBI-like dividends to every household that leaves the majority of both homeowners and renters with more disposable income. And a land value tax could replace other more harmful and anti-productive taxes, like taxes on buildings or on work income. And this is key to addressing the central drivers of the housing crisis. Another pillar article we published this year addressing the number one myth around basic income, work incentive. No study has found a meaningful drop in work beyond students and new parents. And those who do work a little less, maybe that's actually good for society. I encourage you to visit this article and share it. I think it'll come in handy. We published a commentary on the current South Korean president, Lee Jae-myung, who campaigned on a platform that included basic income, social dividends, and land value tax to curb speculation in housing. We call this the trifecta of a new social contract, and I believe these ideas can take hold here in the West. You can read the article on the Commonwealth blog. Besides virtual events like this, we're also trying to organize and support more in-person events. 2 weeks ago, we held 2 panel event meetups in Victoria and Vancouver for housing. About 100 people signed up to attend, including city councilors, public policy experts, researchers, economists, and entrepreneurs. You can watch the recordings also on the Commonwealth blog. We've done a handful of these so far in BC and Toronto, and we're looking to do more in the coming year. If you're interested in attending or organizing one, or you have an idea for a local speaker we should invite, please reach out. We also had the privilege to host some eminent guests on our ongoing Commonwealth Speaker Series. Each of these speakers approaches basic income as a way to share common wealth, whether from technology or natural wealth. We hosted Yanis Varoufakis, former Greek finance minister, who has been for what he calls universal basic dividends to share the gains of technology in a world of growing techno-feudalism. My colleague Liam interviewed 2 great figures from Alaska about their permanent fund dividend, why it's under threat, and what Canada could learn. Rick Halford, former Alaska State Senate President, and Dr. Jack Hickel of the Alaska Permanent Fund Defenders. Dr. Hickel's dad, Walter Hickel, was 2-time governor of Alaska who helped lay the groundwork that made the dividend possible. I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing Dr. Jeffrey Hinton, Nobel laureate pioneer in deep learning. He thinks taxing AIs could help fund UBI. And he also supports a negative income tax, a type of guaranteed income. And he's been consulting at Downing Street and Parliament Hill with job automation as one of his biggest priorities. More recently, we hosted 2 leading thinkers on post-labor economics, YouTuber David Shapiro and former Deloitte senior partner Dalibor Petrovich. They've made valuable contributions to the UBI conversation. David Shapiro has a whole series on post-labor economics, kind of like Star Trek economics, which might be closer than we think. We've interviewed a number of experts on UBI, housing, and Commonwealth, which you can find on the Commonwealth website. On social media, we regularly amplify influential people and allies, and here are some samples from this year. Our videos of Carney making the technology case for basic income, although without saying it, have racked up hundreds of thousands of views, and we think his team and his ministers have seen these. Senator Pate gave one of the most iconic speeches ever, addressing the most common objections to basic income, which we put out in a few highly read threads. Senator Pat Duncan of Yukon, who gave the last speech on Bill S-206 before it passed second reading, and Senator Victor Bourgeau of New Brunswick, who also supports a guaranteed income. Around the world, Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz, who supports a sovereign wealth fund, UBI, and land value tax. And Scott Galloway, who's questioned why we tax what wealth makes more than what sweat makes. Here's a breakdown of our viewership this year. We believe that there is an audience everywhere willing to listen, support, and amplify us, so we'll continue to push and publish on all fronts. To date, we've clocked in almost 200 million impressions, with a vast majority to UBI Works channels in red, plus Commonwealth and Floyd's channels in blue. Here's a breakdown of our subscribers across platforms. Of the nearly 200,000, 36K are new this year, which is a 23% increase year over year. On our site, we're seeing about 1,300 unique visitors a week to ubiworks.ca, mostly from organic search in Canada. Our most viewed page continues to be about Bill S-206, which has also been a strong growth vector for email subscriptions. Commonwealth.ca is seeing a much smaller but growing traffic, several hundred visits a week through direct links and organic search for terms like sovereign wealth fund and land value tax. Our sites are leading SEO on many relevant terms, including mentions in AI summaries, how to pay for basic income, work incentive, Canada UBI, sovereign wealth fund, land value tax, and many similar terms were at or near the top of search rankings. We're continually trying to improve our web presence and user experience. Earlier this year, we launched a web design update with a focus on activism, key talking points, and learning resources. One of our pillar articles on funding basic income was updated to lead with a new anchor that a guaranteed basic income could cost as little as 3% of total government spending with no new taxes on working people. Let's just zoom in on this chart for a second. It's a clean narrative we can all walk away with. Basic income costs less than poverty. Our article on a Canadian Commonwealth fund and dividend maintains a #1 global search ranking for Canadian sovereign wealth funds. So people around the world studying this topic continue to find this. In it, we outline a sovereign wealth fund framework that could work across the country and provinces and explore different ways of financing it from common assets that pays an Alaska-like citizens dividend. We love to publish infographics that deliver simple truths to send our message home. Here we show that nearly 80% of Canada's mineral wealth is being lost to private extraction, worth nearly $1 trillion. That's a 24,000 head tax per Canadian that could be invested to pay us dividends. Here we show that Alberta and Norway have many similarities, but somehow Norway's sovereign wealth fund is almost 100 times larger. There are many calls for Alberta to adopt Alaska's model and pay dividends. Most people don't know that land is the lion's share of wealth in our economy, bigger than the entire TSX and all billionaires' net worth combined. So to solve housing, we probably have to look at land. This chart shows that land values in red are soaring, even as housing per capita in green and building values in blue grow pretty steadily. The housing boom is really a land boom. There's a lot of focus on building more housing, but this chart shows that other countries with similar housing per capita have much lower prices relative to income. So supply doesn't tell the whole story. We have to consider demand for land as an investment. And finally, from our inaugural report, the biggest source of under-earned income in Canada, otherwise known as rents, is from land. We're consistently amplifying news from Canada and abroad about basic income, AI, economic issues that regularly get into the hundreds of thousands or millions of views. We give weekly social media highlights on our Facebook group, UBI Workers, Please join us there. Shout out to our creative guru, Philippe from Quebec, who consistently delivers the best in class. We've created a content production engine that publishes daily across the major platforms. Here's what a typical week looks like on our content scheduler. And we're also getting noticed by many interesting and influential people, politicians, AI leaders, media outlets, Ed the Sock. Here's Obama's chief economist, Betsy Stevenson, sharing our clip of her saying we should pay people a data dividend. One of the biggest AI influencer accounts, Chubby, has been regularly engaging with us and sharing our posts. And there are many accounts like this that are beginning to see the technology angle for basic income. We often test messaging on social, where we get immediate feedback on what resonates. This one was playing on the government's Build Canada Strong campaign. We then used it in a press release with the Basic Income Canada Network and Coalition Canada in response to the federal budget. Now, I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, Liam Wilkinson, to talk about our work on land and upcoming initiatives.
Thank you so much, Ken. I really appreciate the retrospective. So I want to share something that's been in the works for years, and it's going to be a big part of what you can expect to look forward to from us in 2026. So we are the first Canadian charity to establish a microdata research partnership with Statistics Canada. And we're using this partnership to build a computational economic model that we're going to use to explore funding and rebates and basic income models in unprecedented levels of detail. In particular, we did this to explore how the rising value of land, the value that you and I and everyone helps create, could be recouped and used for the benefit of all. This is going to give us the detail about how these policies would look in Canada at the scale of individual tax filers over the period of many years. We're going to look at these policies might mean if they were rolled out today or tomorrow or next election, or even over the course of a decade. We're aiming to answer the exact questions that Senator Pate alluded to that her colleagues in the Finance Committee have. Like what would happen in the case of an economic shock, like another pandemic, or new tariffs, or inflation, or another AI disruption? We're going to look at specific cities and towns with the full variance of policy parameter tweaks like rates and inflation and opt-in or opt-out models. And so the hyper-specific goal of building a powerful tool like this is to figure out precisely how we can maximize the benefits of these policies and minimize the cost. The real goal is much bigger than that. It isn't just playing with policy parameters. At the end of the day, these policies like this, which are often big, can feel abstract and distant when we talk to people. Models are our way of helping make them real. It's turning the values that we all espouse and share into lived outcomes at the scale that people can recognize in their own lives. As Floyd was saying earlier, we're trying to seed the narratives and change how we talk about these ideas in the public square. And the core idea, the idea that underpins this all, is that we all own the commons. We all deserve to share in its gifts. How do we take that idea, that value, and bring it down to the level of a household budget and daily life? So we're going to be using this model and this partnership to build lots of different variants that are going to speak to different people and to different politics. We're going to look at really concrete things, like how much of our Commonwealth is being stolen and privatized today. How would reclaiming that wealth change the incentives in our economy and who our economy works for? How would it change how many homes get built? If we had this, how many young people could afford to live where they grew up? How many grandkids could afford to live near their grandparents? What investments might happen? How will the economy grow and change? Most importantly, how will this improve people's lives? Something we've often encountered when advocating for these ideas, as we have now for many years, is that naysayers often jump directly from it's a bad idea, and maybe with persuasion and evidence we can get to them to a place where they say, okay, fine, it's not a bad idea, but it's too difficult and it won't change anything. Taxes and their revenues and the act of returning them to people can fundamentally reshape housing supply and affordability and opportunity. And that's what we're trying to lay out. That's what we want to demonstrate beyond a doubt to our neighbors, our policymakers, and our elected representatives. So in 2026, there is a lot to look forward to and a lot to be hopeful about. On the basic income side, as Ken was saying, this is a movement that we are proud to be a part of. We're proud to have showed that basic income works. But the question now, we think, is how to make it, as Frank was saying earlier, permanent. How do we make it scalable? How do we make its adoption in Canada politically unavoidable? So to do that, we think we're going to have to expand how we promote basic income, both in scope and in scale. This means looking at some of the new sources of funding that you've been hearing about tonight, and at scales that maybe we haven't considered before. So not just Canada-wide solutions, but options for cities and for First Nations. You know, those who are tired of the social and real costs that they bear from high rents and unaffordable housing, who are willing to look at how land rents could pay for the solutions to the problems that they're causing. Cities are often on the front line and they can't always wait for bigger governments to act. So we want to have solutions for them too. And UBI Works' role at its core as a brand continues to be to empower activists like you and policymakers with narratives and concrete tools. So one of the things that we're working on and we're going to continue to work on in 2026 is hitting those last few remaining ridings and their MPs, MPPs, and MLAs who haven't yet heard from us or their constituents. Ken talked about the letter writing campaign that we ran after the last election and how we're still missing a bunch of ridings. And some of those ridings haven't even received some of our other petitions. They're just a few, but we want to do this, we're calling this kind of a locale targeting, to get really specific towards connections and build advocates in those last few remaining corners of the country that don't have a basic income base. On the other side, for Commonwealth, we're going to be preparing a lot of different policy options with this, with the model that I spoke about, to start fixing our housing crisis. We want to have clear public policy options that demonstrate how land values could guarantee an income security for all, and not just those who are lucky enough to have bought a house at the right time. And we're also going to be working on building out some advocacy initiatives, some real advocacy initiatives for the first time for Commonwealth in support of spreading those ideas. And as we heard from our earlier speakers, the project of building a more fair and more just Canada is a long one, and we realize now more than ever how important it is to share space and energy. So we're going to continue to host those meetups that everyone's been discussing, and we're going to figure out how to further discuss those ideas and build community together. We hope to be hosting a meetup in every major region of the country, and we're going to be having a list up hopefully soon to start giving a general idea of when and where those will be. And if you don't see something that's close enough to you, then we definitely love to host one in your backyard. If you're interested in being a part of that, please do reach out. And lastly, I'd be remiss again if I didn't mention the thing that's come up a couple of times in this call, which is the PEI demonstration project and the petition that is currently on the House of Commons website. If you haven't already, please do sign that. This is a shovel-ready project, and the feds need to step up for anything to move on this. So if you haven't, please visit this link. We'll also share it in the chat. So just from me personally, I want to thank you all for your patience and participation tonight. We have every confidence that 2026 is going to be an exciting chapter in this long story, and we cannot thank you enough for being on the journey with us.
Thank you, Liam. So we have reached the end of our town hall. Thank you to our speakers, the Honorable Senator Kim Pate, Floyd, Dr. Peddle, to all of our donors, and to all of you for making the time and space to power movement towards economic justice, freedom, and equal opportunity. We hope we've given you a chance to get closer to our work and to learn about the ways in which you can help us grow in the new year. So please look out for an email soon. Subscribe to the Commonwealth.ca email list, to UBIWorks.ca's email list, and look out for this year in review presentation. And many of you have asked about the recording. We will be uploading this to YouTube with a link going out soon. So from the whole team at UBI Works, Commonwealth, and SES, we wish you a happy holiday season and see you all next time.